Okay, so for today, we'll be focusing on population fluctuations. So I hope you've watched the last set of videos, the last set of pre-recorded videos that were provided to you to help you answer some of our discussion points for today. But before going through that, let's just go through some of the topics that were not covered last week because of the prioritization in computation. So, as I mentioned during our introductory session last Monday, there are different populations can be characterized by their population growth curve. So, what you're seeing right now are two types of growth curves, a J-shaped curve, so mukhang J, and also an S-shaped curve, mukhang S. So let's first discuss the different characteristics that make a J-curve population growth unique. So when we say that, or when we see that a population has a J-curve, it's undergoing what is called exponential growth. Ito yung pag sobrang bilis, yung pag-increase ng isang population at nag-i-increase siya at an almost indefinite manner. So usually, nangyayari ito under ideal conditions. So usually, the resources are or appear to be unlimited, walang competition, and then wala ring predation. So ang usual characteristics ng isang J-curve, so ito yung letter A ha, yung J-curve, is that yung growth, nagsisimula muna siya ng mabagal, but it accelerates habang dumadami yung population. So it starts slow, but it accelerates as the population size increases. So makikita natin ito madalas sa mga species na mataas ang reproductive rates at abundant yung resources para sa kanila. So we usually see that in bacteria kasi how many of you have taken up microbiology? Can you give me a thumbs up reaction if you've taken up microbiology before? Okay, so familiar kayo dyan, no? Kasi ang bacteria, minsan nagdo-double yung population nila every 20 minutes pag nasa Petri dish. So yun. But apart from bacteria, you also see this kind of growth curve sa mga invasive species. Ngayon, ang problema natin sa mga J-curve na population growth sa isang exponential population growth, kadalasan hindi siya sustainable. Eventually, alam naman natin, hindi infinite ang resources natin, ano? So eventually, resources become limited and so nagli-lead siya to a crash. So ang bilis-bilis niyang dumadami, ang lumalampas siya sa carrying capacity, tas boom, biglang wala ng resources, patay lahat. So yun yung problem sa isang J-curve. Pag meron naman tayong S-curve, so yun na yung letter B, yung kulay orange, yan yung tinatawag nating logistic growth. So logistics, hindi lang siya yung tungkol sa yung mga preparations na ginagamit para sa isang event, yung kung sino yung magpipicture, sino yung magpapakain, and so on. Logistic is also a term we use for ecology. And we use it to describe a growth na nakikita natin dun sa S-curve. So, ang logistic growth, nangyayari siya pag yung population growth bumabagal, pag na-reach na nung population yung maximum sustainable size niya. And usually, yung maximum sustainable size is related to the carrying capacity, or K. So, when you see capital K in ecology, that refers to carrying capacity, no? So, pag bumagal na yung population growth kasi na-reach na yung maximum size, ibig sabihin na-reach na nila yung carrying capacity. So, for species or populations na merong S-curve, yung initial growth niya, kadalasan mabilis. Mukha siyang exponential. Kasi kung titignan niyo yung shape ng letter S, sa start, mukha siyang letter J. Pero bumabagal siya habang nagiging limited na yung resources. So, kaya siya nagiging letter S kasi magsa-start siya ng J, tapos magpa-plateau siya at the carrying capacity, magfa-flat. And it is at this point when birth rate would be equivalent to the death rates of the organism. So this is actually very realistic for most species. Makikita natin yan sa ibang bansa, kunwari may mga deer population, usually nagsistabilize sila in a forest ecosystem kasi limited yung food sources. So rather than increase their population size indefinitely, the moment na reach nila yung carrying capacity, bumabagal yung birth rate. Okay? So, yun. Yung ganitong uri ng tawag dito, population growth, so J-shaped or R-shaped, makikita natin kung pwedeng maging sustainable or unsustainable ang isang population. So again, usually pag nakikita natin yung J-shape, kabahan tayo ng konti, kasi ganyan yung nangyayari ngayon sa humans, kasi nilalampasan na natin yung carrying capacity. Whatever sustaining that population is probably some aberration or some fluctuation. But sooner or later, you can expect a crash. Most healthy ecosystems, their populations would follow an S curve. So yun ang hope natin with the human species na eventually maging S curve tayo. Okay. Now, okay. So, doon sa pre-recorded videos, apart from showing yung exponential growth tsaka logistic growth, pwede rin nating makita ang dalawang uri ng species. So, merong R-selected versus K-selected. So, ang R-selected species, sila yung high yung reproductive rate, maraming mag-anak, pero low parental care. So, nabanggit ko rin to dun sa discussion natin last week. So some examples of our selected species would be, well, alimango, insects, small fish, kasi yun nga, nagpo-produce sila ng napakaraming babies, pero nag-i-invest sila sa napakakonte or walang parental care. So usually, pag R selected yung species, survival depends largely on environmental conditions. So yung kasi kung harsh yung environmental conditions, maraming namamatay. Pag maganda yung environmental conditions, marami sa kanilang nagsusurvive. So kadalasan, our selected species, they grow and reproduce quickly. So nagkakaroon ng rapid population booms when conditions are favorable. Pero may iksi ang lifespans nila, which means that their populations can crash just as fast when conditions worsen. So they're very sensitive to environmental changes, but they have a tendency to colonize unstable or unpredictable environments where resources fluctuate. So their populations, again, can increase ng sobrang bilis pag ideal yung conditions, pero nagkakaroon din sila ng sharp declines due to disease outbreaks, extreme weather, o kaya habitat changes. So, ang R-selected species, hindi nila nire-regulate ang kanilang population size based on carrying capacity. So sila yung mas may tendency magkaroon ng J-shaped population curve. So minsan, madalas nagkakaroon sila ng sudden collapses when food or space runs out. Whereas, ang mga K-selected species naman, kadalasan sila yung mas merong S-shaped na population growth. Konti lang yung offspring na pinoproduce nila, pero mataas ang parental care. So examples ng K-selected would be humans, elephants, lions. So makikita mo, pinagbubuntis ng matagal, pakonti-konti lang yung pag-aanak, and habang juvenile pa yung bata, nakafocus yung parents sa pag-nourish dun sa bata at pagturo sa kanila ng way of life. Their survival depends largely on usually a pack or herd mentality. Nagsusupport sila sa isa't isa. And ang kanilang lifespan ay mahaba at medyo they take their time before they mature. So they're not as sensitive to environmental changes kasi sila mismo within their population, they have mechanisms to adjust their birth rate, to migrate when resources are becoming limited. So they're very sensitive to the carrying capacity. Kaya nga sila case-selected eh. Kasi R-selected reproduction, case-selected carrying capacity. So they regulate their population size based on the carrying capacity of their ecosystem. So minsan bumabagal yung birth rate nila pag konti yung resources, tapos dadami na lang ulit pag dumami yung resources. So given this information about R-selected versus case-selected species, and if you recall the discussions in the recorded videos, first opportunity for class participation for today, which type of species would you see more fluctuations in? So, saang species ang mas madalas ang fluctuation at bakit? Okay, anybody? 10, 9, 8, 7. Okay, Clarice, go ahead.
Hi, Doc. So, as you have mentioned, our selected species prioritize a rapid reproduction and high offspring numbers in unstable environments. And because of this, nagre-result siya into a J shape where there is a rapid production that represents the exponential growth, and there is an increase in the population, which results to the curve becoming steeper. And yung characteristics na to ng our selected species accounts for the fluctuations. It's either biglang may increase in reproduction rate or biglang may increase in mortality rate.
Okay, thank you so much for that, Clarice. And Clarice is correct. Fluctuations in population size, mas madalas mo silang makikita in R-selected species. And when you compare them to K-selected species. And this is because R-selected species exhibit traits, as Clarice has mentioned, that make their populations more susceptible to rapid increases and crashes. Okay? So, how about cycles? To which species, again, R versus K selected pa rin, are cycles more common? More common ha, hindi ibig sabihin exclusive doon. So, from the video, to which species are cycles more common? R or K? 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, just a guess. 2, 1. Okay, so this is one of those situations where nobody tried to guess or try to answer. So because of this, I hope you can screen cap the question and try to research the answer yourself. Because remember, our synchronous sessions are for me to ask you questions or for you to ask me questions and for us to try and discuss things. Kung hindi nyo ita-try, hindi naman bawal yung mali, di ba? So, ayun. So sayang yung opportunity. So I hope next time you are more courageous when trying to answer. Pero wala nang opportunity for this one. Na-miss nyo na. May time limit ba? Ay, sorry, nag-leave na yung accent ko. Saan kasi ako nanggaling. Okay, sige, yan yun, may chances pa. Pero i-research yung sagot nito. Next. Okay, so another important lesson for us scientists is to be able to interpret graphs and their meaning. So between these two graphs, one of them would represent density-dependent populations, and another would represent density-independent populations. So when we say density-dependent, these are populations that are regulated by factors that become stronger as population size increases. So we usually case-selected species are density-dependent population. So ano ba tong regulating factors ng mga density-dependent populations? kunwari, competition. Habang dumadami sila, mas nagiging intense yung competition for food, for space, for mates. Predation din, habang dumadami yung population size, higher prey density would attract more predators. Disease and parasitism, it spreads more easily in crowded populations. And then waste accumulation din. Toxins build up as population increases. Pag ikukumpara naman natin sila sa density-independent populations, ang density-independent, regulated sila by factors that affect individuals regardless of their density. So usually, ang density-independent populations, kadalasan are selected species sila. So ano-ano ang regulating factors ng density-independent populations? So you have natural disasters like hurricanes, wildfires, droughts, floods, ganon. Climate extremes, biglang lamig o kaya biglang init. And then also human impacts. So pollution natin, habitat destruction, and so on. So given that description of density-dependent versus density-independent population, aling graph ang nagre-represent sa density-dependent and then aling graph yung density-independent? So ang nasa left is ito, yung parallel, nasa right, yung naka-X. Sige, Maxine, go ahead.
Hi, Miss. So, yung density-independent population po, yung nasa left graph, kasi po yung birth rate niya at yung death rate niya po are constant regardless of the population size, which is yung N. Yung ano din po, yung graph na to, it's not influenced by density. The rates are typically affected by external factors like you said, weather, natural disasters, or population. Yung sa right naman po, density-dependent population, yung birth rate niya nagdi-decrease and yung death rate niya nag-i-increase as the population size increases po. Tapos eventually po, nag-i-intersect sila at a point where B, tsaka yung D, B is equal sa D po, meaning population growth stops and this is the carrying capacity. Thus, this graph reflects density-dependent regulation because it changes in population density after resource availability, competition, disease spread, and etc. po. Yun po.
Okay, thank you so much, Maxine. And Maxine is correct. So yung nasa left natin is an example of a graph that represents density-independent populations. So kung makikita niyo dito, B stands for birth rate, D stands for death rate. So birth and death, they remain constant over different population sizes. So again, ang tandaan po natin pagdating sa density-independent population, merong tinatawag na boom and bust patterns, meaning may rapid population increases followed by sudden crashes due to environmental changes. And then again, if iba yung graph, pag population growth curve ang pinapakita, J-shaped siya. So populations can rise quickly, but again, are prone to sudden declines. Whereas yung nasa right na graph natin, yan ay isang graph na nagre-represent ng density-dependent populations. Kasi yung B, the birth rates decline, and death rates, yung D, nagre-rise as population size increases. So it leads to a stabilization at carrying capacity where birth rates equals death rates. So ito yung portion na to kung saan sila nag-i-intersect. But again, another representation of density-dependent populations would be your S-shaped or logistic growth curve. So kung growth rate yung pinapakita, where growth slows down and fluctuates around the carrying capacity. So I created this table for you to be able to easily remember the main regulation factors, effect on birth rate, effect on death rate, growth curve, and population stability of density-dependent populations and density-independent populations. So please feel free to screen cap this slide, which should help you review for your coming long exam this Thursday. Grabe, ang bilis-bilis po ng panahon. mag-e-exam na kami sa Module 3. So, ayan po, para mas madali niyo siyang maaral for the upcoming exam. So, right now, we're talking about density-dependent populations and density-independent populations. Pero meron ding tinatawag na density-dependent factors or density-independent factors. So, ito yung mga factors na pwedeng makaapekto sa isang population or sa isang species, pero yung iba, mas matindi yung epekto pag high yung population density, so yun yung density-dependent factor, or pwedeng wala naman silang pakialam sa population density, kaya sila density-independent. So, a portion of the recorded lectures ni Sir Al tested your ability on trying to figure out kung density-dependent or density-independent ba yung factors. So, yung isa sa mga examples si Sir Al ay tungkol sa logs. Mga kahoy, malalaking kahoy na tumatama sa mga barnacle na nakadikit sa bato sa may beach. So, yung mga logs ba na ito, yung malalaking kahoy, troso sa Tagalog, no? Are they density-dependent or density-independent factors? Can anyone try to answer and explain why? Then, okay, Clarice, go ahead.
So according po sa recording, logs are density independent factors because it doesn't really directly affect the number of barnacles that was produced during that time. Yes, it can affect or it can destroy yung barnacle, but hindi siya nag-a-account dun sa mismong pag-populate ng barnacles po.
Okay, thank you so much for that. And Clarice is correct. So, yung mga logs, pag tinatamaan nila yung barnacles sa beach, density-independent factor sila. Kasi yung impact nila dun sa barnacle population, hindi siya nakadepend kung marami bang barnacles yung present. Nakadepend siya sa lakas ng waves, no? Tatama at tatama yung troso, whether konti or madami yung barnacles na naka-attach. So, pag malaking alon, pag may bagyo, pag high tide, yun yung nakaka-affect sa lakas ng pagtama ng logs, hindi yung dami ng barnacles. So again, bakit density-independent factor ito? So barnacle mortality, yung pagkamatay ng barnacles galing sa mga logs, random siyang nag-occur, whether the population is high or low. Yung frequency at intensity ng log movement, nakadepend siya sa environmental conditions, not the number of barnacles. So similar to natural disasters, bagyo, malalakas na alon, tsunami, yung mga logs ay nag-act as physical disturbances na nagtatanggal ng barnacles or pumapatay sa barnacles in an unpredictable manner. So kung ikukumpara natin siya sa mga density-dependent factors for barnacles. So para lang may comparison tayo. Yung space, yan, density-dependent siya. Kasi when mataas ang population size ng barnacles, pag mataas ang density niya, individuals would now have to compete for rock surfaces to attach to. So ang space, density-dependent factor siya. Another density-dependent factor, para lang may comparison tayo, is predation. So may mga species katulad ng snails o kaya starfish, kumakain sila ng barnacle. And predation pressure would increase with barnacle density. Kasi ang dami, kakainin na natin sila. So mas malaki yung chances na magkaroon ng predators pag malaki yung population density kasi ma-attract sila dun sa location. Ano pa ba? Isa pang example ng density-dependent factor for barnacles would be disease o kaya parasites. Kasi pag mas mataas yung population density ng barnacles, mas mabilis mag-transmit ng disease from one barnacle to the other. So again, para lang clear sa lahat, yung pagtama ng kahoy sa barnacles, density-independent sila ha, kasi yung mortality ay dahil sa random external physical force. Pero yung factors, katulad ng competition at predation, density dependent sila kasi mas tumitindi yung effect nila pag dumadami yung population ng barnacles. Okay. In a closed environment, so again, napaka-importante nitong statement na to na sasabihin ko. In a closed environment, so let's say fish tank, no? Hindi lake. In a fish tank, is oxygen availability density dependent or density independent for fish populations? Again, in a fish tank, in a closed environment, is it density dependent or density independent? Okay, anyone? 10? 9? Okay, Zell, go ahead.
Hi po, Doc. In a closed environment, I think oxygen is a density-dependent factor po because oxygen is limited po and mas magkaagawan po sila sa oxygen pag madami po silang yung fish po.
Okay, thank you so much for that, Zell. So, Zell is correct. Oxygen is very essential for fish survival, and fish are very dependent on dissolved oxygen in water for respiration. In a well-oxygenated environment, pag laging may supply ng oxygen, fish would have a tendency to thrive and grow. However, kung closed yung system, let's say a fish tank, as fish populations increase, oxygen demand rises. If too many fish are present in a limited space, competition for oxygen intensifies, so nagkakaroon ng stress, ng slower growth, and even mortality. And in extreme cases, pag naubos yung oxygen, so nagkakaroon ng oxygen depletion or hypoxia, nagkakaroon ng maraming namamatay, so die-offs, especially in, yun nga, enclosed or stagnant water bodies. So dahil dito, ang oxygen ay merong density-dependent relationship. So, kasi pag mababa ang population ng fish, there is less competition for oxygen, and so most individuals would get enough to survive. Pero, as fish population density increases, oxygen demand rises, leading to greater competition for available oxygen. Now, if the population exceeds the oxygen supply, doon nagkakaroon ng stress at mortality. Okay? So, ang key mechanism dito is yung oxygen availability on fish survival actually depends on population density. So, more fish, more oxygen consumption, increased competition, and so it becomes a density-dependent limitation. Okay? Christine, go ahead.
Miss, may question po ako. What if po, parang yung oxygen po, parang yung oxygen level po nag-drop kasi dahil po sa sudden temperature po or dahil sa pollution. If hindi po inaano yung fish numbers, magiging density independent factor po ba siya?
That's actually a very good question, Christine. And yes, if the cause for the drop in oxygen availability is not the competition among the fish populations, then yes, it becomes density independent. So napaka-important dito yung statements that preclude the final question. Kaya dito ang sinabi ko, in a closed environment. Pero in an open environment, ang hirap niyang i-decide kasi tama ka, paano kung nag-drop yung temperature, paano kung nagkaroon ng algal bloom. So maraming ibang factors na pwedeng mag-affect ng oxygen availability in an open setup. And in that case, it's not straightforward density dependent or density independent. So you have to analyze what is the cause for the limitation in oxygen availability. So good question, Christine. Okay. Sige. So, next question. In a closed environment, doon pa rin tayo sa fish tank natin, ano? Kasi again, nabanggit na ni Christine, bakit ang hirap tignan pag open setup kasi ang dami pwedeng iba't ibang factors. So balik tayo sa fish tank. So sa fish tank natin, di ba nagwiwiwi si fish? So pag nagwiwiwi si fish, nagkakaroon ng ammonia. So yung ammonia build-up ba ay density dependent or density independent? Again, ammonia buildup, pag maraming wiwi sa environment, ay, yuck, kadiri. So is it density dependent or density independent? 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, gusto na po ng time, baka gusto niyo manghula, 2, 1, ayun, sakto. Oh, Clarice, go ahead.
I think po that ammonia buildup is density dependent factor because if there is an increase in ammonia buildup, it can directly affect the population of fish. Kapag mataas ang ammonia buildup, magiging mababa yung population ng fish. Pero kapag mababa yung ammonia buildup, may increase in fish population. Ammonia buildup is not a mere physical or external disturbance because it directly affects the population growth po.
Okay, thank you for that, Clarice. So in a closed setup, like a fish tank, habang dumadami yung fish natin, waste products katulad ng ammonia can accumulate in the water. So high ammonia levels is toxic, so pwede siyang mag-lead to stress, disease, and again, mortality sa ating fish population. And that makes ammonia build up a density-dependent factor kasi its effects become stronger as the fish population increases. So more fish, they produce more waste, leading to higher ammonia concentrations, which can negatively impact fish health. But when the population is smaller, ammonia levels remain low, and so they are less likely to harm fish. So again, this makes ammonia buildup or ammonia toxicity density dependent. Okay, let's see, one more. How about temperature drop? Naiwang naka-on yung aircon dun sa room kung saan nandun yung fish tank for much longer period than usual. So biglang sobrang lumamig yung room. Is this density dependent or density independent? 10? Miggy, go ahead.
I think this is density independent because the factor that came into is not the density or the increase or the decrease in the population or the competition involved within the fish population, but from an external factor po.
Okay, thank you so much for that, Miggy. And Miggy is correct. Pag lumamig yung temperature, pwedeng sobrang lumamig yung tubig kung nasaan yung tank natin. So this reduces oxygen diffusion into the water, and it can make conditions harsh for the fish in the tank. So some of the fish could struggle to survive, yung iba baka mamatay, regardless of how many fish were in the tank before lumamig. So temperature drop, it's density independent kasi it affects the fish population regardless of its size. So kahit marami or konti yung fish sa lake, yung paglamig, or lake tuloy, kung marami or konti yung fish sa tank, yung biglang paglamig, at dahil doon kukonti yung oxygen na available para sa fish, it would impact them equally. So unlike density-dependent factors, which become stronger as population size increases, yung pagbabago ng environment affects all individuals in the population regardless of their density. Okay, so yun. I think that more or less wraps up some of the theoretical aspects. But before we give you time, kasi may quiz ulit tayo later at 10:30, let's go through some practice computations again. So last meeting, you went through some computations related to net reproductive rate, to fecundity, and so on. So we'll go through that. But with a little, ano ba? With a little complications. Kasi kala natin minsan napaka-straightforward. So this time, since meron na kayong practice from the previous meetings, magpo-pause ako ng konti to give you time to compute. And then, pag meron lang nag-volunteer sa inyo na ng sagot, saka lang ako magpapakita kung paano siya kinocompute. So, okay. So, kadalasan, pag hinihingi sa inyo yung net reproductive rate, napaka-straightforward ng formula, Lx times Mx. Pero paano kung ang given is N sub x tsaka M sub x? So, can you compute for the net reproductive rate of this population, but ang given is N sub x, hindi L sub x? Okay, so I'll give you a couple of minutes. I think I have 3 or 4 of these, so we can maybe dedicate 10 minutes each to discussing them. So I'll give you maybe a 7-minute time limit to try and compute this for yourselves. Pero again, kailangan sa exam, mabilis na kayo ha, at cycle lang ang meron tayo. So if somebody volunteers to try and answer this question within 7 minutes, I will show you how it's done. But if nobody, then ayan, homework nyo siya. Paano i-compute ang net reproductive rate kung ang given ay N sub x? Dun, dun, dun. Okay, 2 minutes and 20 seconds left for your time allotment for computation. If anybody wants to try and guess, please raise your hand, and we'll listen to your walkthrough of how you computed for net reproductive rate. Okay, Zell, go ahead.
Try lang po, Doc. But to get the L sub X or yung survivorship po, what I did was divide each N sub X with N sub 0, which is 1,000. Then I got yung proportions po and then multiplied by M sub X to get LX MX po.
Okay, so basically what you did was you divided N sub X with N sub 0, which is 1,000. So again, if you're using Excel, you can put the $ there, and then Control C, Control V. Did we have the same net reproductive rate of 2.5, Zell?
Yes po, Doc.
Okay. So again, to walk through everybody with what Zell did and what I did. So remember that the formula for L sub X is N sub X divided by N sub 0. And N sub 0 is the N sub X at birth. So it's the number of individuals alive. Oops. Bakit ako? Si 9 out. Wait lang mga anak. Naka-caps lock kasi siya, be. Mali pa rin. Wait lang guys, magsa-stop share muna ako. Kainis. Lurky naman si Tiny. Okay, ayan, game. Share screen na ulit. Okay, so again, the formula for L sub X is N sub X divided by N sub 0, where N sub 0 is the number of individuals who were born, no? So that's why it's the N sub X at 0 to 1. So all you have to do is, ayan, 800, kunyari, kung gusto mong malaman yung L sub X dito, at nagre-reconnect pa rin siya, it's 801 divided by 1,000. It's 789 divided by 1,000. So, ayan, pwede na yata akong mag-type. Ayan. Equals 801 divided by 1,000. So, pag cycle, syempre, mano-mano nyo itong gagawin. Ganyan. Pero, pag Excel, again, lagyan nyo lang ng $, yung letter, tsaka yung number. Pwede mo siyang i-copy-paste. So, mas mabilis. So once magawa mo na yan, meron ka ng L sub X. So for each age class, you multiply L sub X with M sub X, and then you add, you get your net reproductive rate at the end. Okay, so that's one important factor for you to remember. Now, next. Paano kung instead na N sub X, D sub X naman yung given? Paano nyo naman siya i-compute? So I'll give the class another 7 minutes again to try and compute this. Tapos, if you're ready to describe how you were able to do it, just raise your hand and then tell us the net reproductive rate that you computed for, so that I would then be able to share with the class if that's right or wrong. Okay, so this is another challenge. What if D sub X naman ang given? Okay, 2 minutes left to finish this round of computation. Again, if anybody wants to volunteer on how they're trying to compute for this and what their net reproductive rate value is, you can just raise your hand. Thank you. Okay, 47 seconds left. Anybody who'd like to guess how this is done? Okay, Precious, go ahead.
Hello po, Doc Shana. I think I tried to pero yung Excel sheet ko wasn't really working that well. So, yung equation na lang po sabihin ko. So,
Mhm.
before we can find LX and MX, since the given is DX, kailangan po ihanap yung, yung value ng NX in order to find LX. So, for LX, it's going to be NX plus N0
Mhm.
divided by 2. So
Mhm.
once we find LX, we can multiply it by MX po.
Okay. So thank you so much for that, Precious. So Precious walked us through the importance of deriving NX from DX, and then from there, de-derive na natin si LX. So para makuha natin si N sub X from DX, kung meron tayong Excel, remember, magsa-start tayo sa ilalim. So from the bottom, ayan, si 3. Tapos, para makuha natin yung susunod, 3 plus yung 3 na nasa left. And then, susunod, bakit niya hinaharangan? 6 plus 90. So, copy-paste lang natin yan paakyat. So, ayan. Pag may ganyan na tayo, pwede na natin gamitin yung formula natin na n sub x divided by n sub 0. And remember that n sub 0, para madali yung copy-paste kung Excel, lalagyan natin ng dollar sign yung letter tsaka yung number. Ngayon, kung mano-mano tayo dahil naka-scientific calculator, 801 divided by 1,000, 789 divided by 1,000, and so on and so forth. Pero kung yun nga, naka-Excel sheet tayo, copy-paste. And we would reach a net reproductive rate of 2.5. Sheena, you have a question?
Yes po, Doc. I want to ask lang po if ever sa exam we're given a similar type of question po where we have to find an X, do we assume po na the first value is always 1,000 po?
You only do that if what's given to you is survival rate. If what's given to you is d sub x, you have to add from the bottom up. You don't assume the number on top.
Okay po, Doc. Thank you.
Okay. Precious, do you have a follow-up question?
None na po.
Okay, so,
Na-compute na po sa Excel. Thank you.
okay, that's good. I was just asking because I saw that your hand was still up, but no worries. Okay, so those were the two practice questions. Oh, what did I do? The two practice questions that I have for you today. But before, so we still have about 19 minutes. So to continue our discussion, let's now go through the another portion that Sir Al discussed in the pre-recorded sessions is the exploitation ecosystem hypothesis, which is represented by this chart over here. So the exploitation ecosystem hypothesis explains the different controls of different populations in an ecosystem, whether it's competition, herbivory, and so on. So the importance of the ecosystem, the exploitation ecosystem hypothesis, EEH, is that it shows us the importance of trophic cascades. So, kailangan tandaan natin sa isang ecosystem, nag-i-interact yung iba't ibang species na meron doon. So, predators tend to suppress herbivores, at pag nangyari yun, fewer plants would end up being eaten, and then i-increase yung population ng plants, pero pag nag-increase naman yung population ng plants, the plants then end up competing for space, sunlight, and nutrients. So, pinapakita rin niya yung indirect effects minsan na yung presence ng carnivores, akala natin ang impact lang niya ay sa prey, pero it can also shift plant limitation from herbivory, yung kumakain sa kanila na prey, back to competition kasi fewer herbivores are present to regulate plant numbers. Okay? So, ang pinaka-importanting tandaan pagdating sa EEH is that it predicts that in ecosystems with at least 3 trophic levels, plants, herbivores, and then carnivores, yung mga plants, yung population growth nila will be limited by competition rather than by herbivory kasi carnivores indirectly protect plants by keeping herbivore populations in check. So given that summary, no, na diniscuss din naman ni Sir Al, okay, another opportunity for class participation. So column A, okay, plants lang ang nag-exist sa ecosystem. Anong interaction or anong event ang nagko-control sa population nila? Okay, again, anong klaseng interaction among plants ang nagko-control sa population nila? 10, 9, okay, Julia, go ahead.
It's competition po since there's no herbivores that will limit their population growth.
Okay, very good. So pag plants lang ang nag-exist sa ecosystem, the primary thing that controls the population is competition. Competition for space, competition for nutrients, and so on. Now, pagdating sa column B, meron na tayong herbivores. So, what controls the population of plants pagdating naman sa column B? Okay, anong event or anong relationship ang nagko-control sa population ng plants pag nasa column B na tayo? 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4. Okay, Precious, go ahead.
Yung column B, plants limited by herbivores or herbivores limited by competition. So those are the two lines nakita ko po from the discussion.
Okay, so Precious is correct. Yung population ng plants ay kinokontrol ng herbivory o yung pagkain sa kanila, whereas the population of herbivores are controlled by competition against each other. Pero pagdating sa exam, tandaan nyo kung ano yung question ha. So ang question dito is what controls the population of plants? So plants lang yung tinitignan. So pag dun sa choices merong herbivory and competition, hindi yun yung sagot. Ang sagot is herbivory lang. Kasi ang concern natin for this question is for plants. So please make sure to clearly read that. Read the question in the exam para ma-make sure natin na hindi kayo mako-confuse. Kasi tama si Precious, Ang nagko-control sa plants ay herbivory kasi sila yung kumakain sa kanila. Ang nagko-control sa population naman ng herbivores ay yung competition sa isa't isa. So Precious is correct. However, in the perspective of the question, what controls the population of plants in column B? Dapat ang sagot lang is herbivory kasi hindi naman natin tinatanong what controls the population of herbivores in column B. Okay? So I hope that's clear to everybody para hindi kayo masyadong nag-overthink sa exam. Okay? Sige, one more question about EEH. How about column C? Meron ng plants, herbivores, at carnivores. What controls the population of plants in column C? 10, 9, 8, 7, 6. Zel, go ahead.
Doc, I think what limits or what controls the population of plants in column C is yung competition among plants po.
Okay, correct. So Zel is correct. So again, yun ang main principle ng exploitation ecosystem hypothesis. Pagdating sa column 3, ang nagko-control na ulit sa population ng plants ay competition. Kasi yung herbivory na kinokontrol siya sa column B, hindi na yun main factor kasi yung population ngayon ng herbivores ay nakokontrol na ng carnivores. So, yung herbivores at carnivores, sila na yung mas may impact sa isa't isa. And so yung plants, medyo mas na-leave alone na sila to their own mechanisms, kaya babalik tayo sa competition. Okay? So that's one of the main themes of the exploitation ecosystem hypothesis. Okay? So we have about 12 minutes left. So for the last 12 minutes, one more principle that is involved in population ecology is Grimes' model of life history. So itong pyramid na ito, so napakaraming pyramid no pagdating sa ecology. It's an ecological framework na kinaklasify ang mga plant strategies. So nakafocus tayo sa halaman based on how they adapt to different environmental conditions. So isa to sa mga classical examples, napaka-important niya kasi 1977 pa to ginawa. I was tempted to say 19 kopong-kopong. Pero yun nga, hindi porket luma na ang isang principle, hindi na siya important. So it's still applicable to explaining how different plants adapt until now. So it focuses on the interaction of three main environmental factors, stress, disturbance, and competition. And so, kung titignan natin yung tatlong environmental factors na to, pwede nating makategorize yung plants into three primary strategies. So first, yung competitive strategy. So yung C strategists natin, ang tawag sa kanila competitors, nasa taas sila ng pyramid. So yung mga C strategists, they thrive in environments with low stress and low disturbance, but high competition. Low stress, low disturbance, high competition. So they grow rapidly, they invest in resource acquisition, paano ma-maximize yung light na nakukuha, paano ma-maximize yung nutrients na nakukuha, and so they end up dominating stable habitats. So examples nito, mga puno katulad ng oak o kaya beech. So there's a tree that's called beech, ha? I'm not referring to the beach as in the ocean. So beech tree, oak tree, shrubs, talahib, yung tall grasses, no? So yun. Now, meron ding tinatawag na S strategists, yung stress tolerators, sana all. So sila naman, makikita natin sila in environments with high stress. So mainit, extreme temperature, so kaya malamig, nutrient poor soils. Pero kahit high stress, low disturbance, tsaka low competition. Siyempre wala na silang kakumpetensya kasi sino ba naman ang gusto ng stress? Right? So yun nga, stress tolerators, high stress, low disturbance, pero low competition din. So they grow slowly, medyo mabagal, but they have very long lifespans and they allocate resources sa pag-survive nila rather than rapid growth. So basta stable yung pagtubo at pagkabuhay nila. So examples yan, mga cactus na makikita natin sa deserts, lichens na nakadikit sa rocks, alpine plants, so yung mga pine trees, ganon. Now, meron din tayong R strategists or ruderals. Sila naman, they thrive in environments with high disturbance, pero low stress at low competition. So sila, they grow quickly, reproduce early, but they rely on seed dispersal to colonize new areas after disturbances. So parang kahit maraming disturbance, nagsusurvive sila by throwing out their offspring para maghanap ng ibang areas para mabuhay. So examples, weeds, as in yung mga damo na hindi natin gustong tumutubo, annual plants katulad ng dandelions, o kaya pioneer species in abandoned fields. So yun yung tatlong main. Pero ano tong mga nasa gitna na CS, SR, CR, at CSR? So yan yung mga intermediate plant strategies naman. So they fall between the three primary life history strategies. So sinasabi ni Grimes, even though may tatlong main group, merong mga intermediates na nagko-combine. So tignan muna natin si CS, competitive stress tolerant strategy. So ito, mga halaman na makikita sa lugar na may moderate competition at moderate na stress pero low disturbance. So adapted sila sa resource-limited pero stable conditions. So ang mga CS na plants, they tend to be slow-growing and long-lived. So they balance efficiency in resource use with survival in stressful conditions. So examples niyan, mga evergreen na shrubs, conifers na makikita sa mga nutrient-poor forests. Yung CR naman, yan yung toilet, competitive ruderal strategy. So makikita natin sila sa habitats na may moderate competition at moderate disturbance pero low stress. So mabilis silang tumubo like ruderals, but they still invest in competition to dominate a habitat. So you frequently find them in moderately disturbed ecosystems katulad ng grasslands and early successional forests. So mabilis silang tumubo. Example would be birch tree. Kasi kung titingnan nyo ang life history ng birch tree, they quickly colonize disturbed areas, pero competitive pa rin sila, kaya nilang makipag-compete with resources. Okay? And then we have SR, stress-tolerant ruderal strategy. So they occur in high stress but frequently disturbed environments. So sobrang tibay ng mga to kasi they adapt to surviving difficult conditions and they recover quickly from disturbances. So usually maliliit sila, slow-growing plants with high tolerance to extreme conditions. So examples niyan ay moss at saka lichens na nag-grow in deserts or nutrient-poor disturbed sites. And then finally, you have your CSR, your generalists. So balanced yung strategy nila. So they can tolerate moderate levels of competition, moderate levels of stress, and moderate levels of disturbance. Kung pakunti-kunti lang lahat. So these are plants with a mix of all three traits. So it makes them very flexible in different environments. So example niyan, damo, katulad ng ryegrass. They can tolerate grazing, which is a kind of disturbance. So pwede silang kainin ng baka or ng kambing. They can survive a relative level of nutrient limitation, which is stress, and they can also compete with other plants. So, magandang inaalam yung mga ganitong adaptive strategies ng mga halaman at ng ibang mga hayop kasi mape-predict natin na kung ito yung dominant na organism sa isang ecosystem, saan siya pupunta? meron pa bang ibang, kasi kung competitors kunwari ang makikita sa isang location, pwede pa bang may sumingit na ibang halaman? Medyo malabo na kasi competitors yung dominant. Kung ruderals, yes, pwede pang may sumingit, pero kung biglang nagkaroon ng forest fire, baka yung mga sumingit na plants, kung hindi sila adaptive to disturbance, may extinct sila agad, pero yung ruderals natin, pwede pang mag-adjust kasi kaya nila na mag-survive sa isang environment na may disturbances, katulad ng forest fires. Pag mainit masyado sa isang lugar, ang isang magandang itanim would be stress tolerators. So, napaka-importante niyang framework kung, for example, environmental manager ka, tas gusto mong malaman paano ma-rehabilitate ang isang ecosystem. So, Grimes model is actually very close to my heart because in my master's thesis, I worked with indigenous peoples, mga Aita, sa Region 3. And yung binigay kasi sa kanilang lupa for their, ano bang tawag dun? Yung ancestral land nila, sobrang degraded na niya. Kasi nagtanim sila ng bigas, ng rice, sa isang lugar na hindi dapat tinataniman. Tapos puro rice lang ng rice yung tinatanim. So naubos yung nutrients dun sa highland portion. So my master's thesis was to help them, was to design an environmental plan to help recover the habitat. Kasi hindi naman porket degraded na, wala tayong magagawa. So, it involved choosing local species na stress tolerators, na ruderals, para mag-serve as your primary species. Tapos, eventually, after so years, pwede ka na mag-introduce ng pwedeng competitors na namumunga na ng mga prutas o kaya gulay na pwede nilang gamitin. So basically, I created an agroforest design. And up to now, pag nabibisita ako sa lugar, pag umuwi ako sa Bataan, nakakatuwa kasi na-maintain pa rin nila yung lupain nila. So, meron ng isang grupo ng mga ita sa Bataan na hindi na lang namamalimos pag Pasko. Sila na yung nagbebenta ng gulay at saka prutas kasi na-rehabilitate nila yung forest nila. I mean, back then, it was a lot easier to work with indigenous groups pag ganyan kasi hindi pa masyadong maraming policies. I mean, a lot of these ethics policies are very important, of course, kasi may mga nang-aabuso talaga sa ating mga tribo-tribo, sa ating mga indigenous groups. Pero ngayon, mas mahirap nang mag-work with them because there are more laws and policies for their protection. But yeah, that was one of my core memories as a researcher, no? Muntik na akong mapana, like literally, as in, kasi I was a different, hindi nila ako kilala and so on. So very sensitive sila sa mga ganon. So buwis buhay minsan ng research. But anyway, I think more or less that concludes our the main topics of population ecology that we need to talk about in preparation for your exam this Thursday. We still have 1 minute before the quiz opens. Any questions or points of clarification? Just like in previous long exams, number 2 pencil, sharpener, eraser, and scientific calculator will be needed for Thursday. Dun pa rin tayo sa ating classroom. But yeah, I will post a reminder either today or tomorrow for things that you have to bring. But yeah, any questions or points of clarification for Thursday? Okay, if none, ideally, the quiz should have opened in Animo Space. Please feel free to drop out this call to focus your internet speed on the quiz. Good luck po sa pag-aaral, and I hope our practice sessions have been very useful. Laban lang mga anak, you can do it! Konti na lang! Bye-bye! See you Thursday!
Thank you po, Doc.
Thank you!